We are in Washington, D.C. with Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi Wine, meeting those who have been funding General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni for many years, asking them eye to eye to stop funding the dictator, to stop funding the killings of Ugandans, to stop funding the death of Ugandans, to stop funding the slavery of Ugandans, to stop funding the abduction of Ugandans, to stop funding the tear gassing, the bulleting, the ballot stuffing of Ugandans, to stop funding the human rights violations in Uganda. Okay, let's have Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi Wine speaking, talking, addressing those who have been funding General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni.
Really, this is probably like the 10th time I'm watching it, but every time I watch it, it feels new. Yeah, what you saw was just, in my view, the film was just about to start. Just after that, we were attacked. That very day is when, like Brother Milton was saying, that's when General Museveni decided that he could not let that happen anymore. That very day, there was an attempt on my life, and my driver was shot. There was gunshot fired at my car, but my driver fell victim, and he died instantly. I was later on abducted by the military. It took more than 72 hours when nobody knew where I was. I was tortured gravely. Many other people were killed. And that was just the beginning of the crackdown. Since then, many of our brothers and sisters have been killed. When I was watching that film, I was counting the people that have died. Many of the people that are in that film are not living anymore. Many were killed, and others were abducted. We've never seen them again. And yet we remain strong. We remain unstopped. I'm just glad that I'm here to speak on their behalf. I'm not here as the hero of the film, because I'm not. The real heroes are those unspoken about, ladies and gentlemen, that you see, the men and women who nobody knows, those that have died, those that paid the ultimate price, and those that are still strong and fighting for better. I'm glad that film was covered. When I first watched that film, I complained to the producers, and this is what I said to them: why did you have to make General Museveni look so good? Because in my view, not even 1% of the brutality was covered. And they explained to me, they told me that if they showed all the medieval kind of torture, maybe the film would disgust people, especially in the West, that are not used to so much brutality. So they limited the brutality. However, I'm sure that if you watched it to the end, you would conclude that it was so brutal. And yet, I insist, not even 1% of the brutality was covered in that film. Like I said, every time I see the international audience watching that film, I feel glad that we are succeeding in making the world understand firsthand what's happening in Uganda. When the producers of that film asked me and my family to open up and let the camera reach anywhere in our lives, I accepted, because we wanted to invite the world to Uganda. Many times you read edited stories about Uganda. We have a very smart president, and I must give it to him, that he has been very smart in covering the atrocities that have happened in Uganda. A rosy picture has been drawn about Uganda, courtesy of Ugandan payers' money. There are many lobbyist organizations here in America and in Europe that are paid to paint a rosy picture and ensure that none of that brutality goes out in the world. So we are showing this to the world, not because we want you to come and help us. No, but we just want you to help stop sponsoring our death. All that you see happening is courtesy of your taxpayers' money. The United States government gives to the tune of $1 billion to General Museveni's government every year. The security collaborations and all that. That's exactly what that money does. Unfortunately, you did not see the brutality because it was about to start in the next maybe 3-5 minutes from where we stopped. But those of you that will be able to see the rest of the film, you'll see what your taxpayers' money is doing. It's buying bullets instead of medicines. It's buying tear gas instead of oxygen. It is being used not to fix hospitals or schools, but to bribe those in the opposition and to ensure that we remain under subjugation forever. The people of Uganda, who are largely young people, are being enslaved in their country. We are having modern day slaves in Uganda. Every day, hundreds of young girls are being shipped into the Arab world. Many of them return dead. Many of them have reported of gross violations upon them. In Uganda, we even have businesses of organ trade where somebody is employed, but they are actually not employed to work, but their organs are being sold. All that is being happening. We have new colonialists in blastings in Africa, and they are being sponsored by the West. So, like I said, we're not here to cry for mercy, but we're here to plead our case and to say that you guys can help stop this. You, the American taxpayers, you at least have the luxury of rights. You are listened to by your leaders. We request you to please reach out to your representatives, your congressmen and women, and ask them to change the policy on Uganda, to stop sponsoring modern day slavery, to stop sponsoring our death. Thank you very much, and I'll be glad to share.
So we want to now have a discussion and have an opportunity for questions and answers and so forth. And I want to start with Kim Poole. And I want to start with her, and we want to make sure, where are our mics here? Oh, okay, we want to make sure the mics are functioning. The reason why I want to start with Kim Poole, not just because she's the youngest person on the panel, because she's an artist. And she believes, as I believe, and many of us believe, in fact, there was an essay done by Ahmed Sekou Touré who talked about culture and revolution. And by the way, those of us who are African Americans, you see the songs and whatever, if you reflect back on the Black freedom struggle in the South, what was at the base of it? People were inspired by the freedom songs, the freedom slick singers and so forth. Culture is a powerful weapon. One of my dear beloved friends, Hakeem Madhubuti, one of his favorite poems is called Art. It talks about the importance of art. So I wanted to start with you, Sister Kim, by talking to us about your reflections on the film. When I talk to you, you are already familiar with Bobi Wine, and you're familiar with artists all over the continent who are raising their voices through art. So your reflections on the film, but also your thoughts about the power of what you do and the power of art as a part of the Black liberation movement. You have the floor.
We shall overcome. That's how it makes me feel. Come on, sing along with me. Yes, there it is. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. And listen, that's not just a song. I remember when my 90-year-old grandmother told me that she's 91, and she said, and she sang this song to me, but she's a woman that remembers what it was like to drink from white-only water fountains. This is not a book for her. She remembered having to go to the back of the bus. And it was these kind of songs that sang her way through. And so when I see him singing with the kids, listen, it made my heart cry. Because I have kids right now in Uganda working with the Teaching Artists Institute. I have an 89-year-old elder right now, the only African-American woman in Uganda with citizenship that supports Bobi Wine, was afraid to come here because she said, I can't be seen. I don't know what will happen when I get back home to Uganda. Young people that work with me every day with the Teaching Artists Institute to say, Kim, how do I tell my story using the music? Because I'm afraid if somebody hears me say something louder than a whisper, that I could be one of those people that I heard about. And so when I hear that film, I think about all the people that weren't there, that didn't tell their story, that were afraid to say. And so I appreciate him saying what wasn't being said, speaking on behalf of the speechless. But they have so much to say, and these words, they're in their heads, and they bounce around their thoughts. They're trapping, they're imprisoning them, and they sleep. So their sleep is disrupted at night. They tell me they're having trouble sleeping. They don't see a future for themselves. They're asking me, when are you going to help me come to America? Because I think if I can just get out of Uganda. And I'm saying, listen, I'm trying to get to Uganda. I'm trying to get a passport. What are you saying? I'm looking right now. Which one of my people power partners is going to marry me so I get my Uganda? I understand that art and culture is going to be your power. But when I saw this movie, I was disappointed when I watched a judge sit up under a blonde wig making a decision. I said, what is the culture in Uganda? What does African culture in Uganda look like? What does an African attire look like? What does it look like when I sing Ugandan songs? At least he's captured that much, but there's so much more. So really, honestly, the possibility, all those young people, culture is fluid. It continues to change. It's not just promoting and preserving the traditions of yesterday. It's also imagining what is coming next. Artists help us to define reality. They inspire us, and he's done that. I saw that in the movie, and we're ready to stand beside him, not just artists in Uganda, not just Bobi Wine, but he's the beginning of what will happen across the continent. We're looking at Mali, we're looking at Niger. It's the end of our era, and we have to be prepared, not because it's not coming, it is coming. We need to be prepared to make sure that we are better than our predecessors. Because like he said, there are new colonizers with black skin that look just like you. When you don't know who's your brother or who's your kinfolk, because inside their mind and inside their heart, they're European. They're the colonizer. And the question becomes, how do we train young people to think with the Pan-Africanist mind of Nyerere? How do we change their minds and their hearts? It's the art and it's the culture that's going to connect and reach them. And so we stand here in partnership.
All right. Powerful. Milton Natamati, you have been working on this issue. You are from Uganda, but you're a Pan-Africanist, and you know in the Pan-African Unity Dialogue, we've been working on this issue. So I wish you would, in your own way, not only reflect on the film, but sort of share with our audience just the utter criminality of Museveni. And I think one of the things that becomes incredibly important, and Milton and I had this discussion because I am a devotee of Amakal Cabral. And one of the things that Cabral talks about is that we must also struggle against our own weaknesses. And one of the key issues we have is coming out of the Black Liberation Movement, it was very easy in Philadelphia when Rizzo, some of you back in the day will know who Rizzo was. He was a vicious white man who was brutalizing black people. Oh, well, we could fight. We were riled up. But when Wilson Good, the black man, dropped the bomb on the MOVE movement, we didn't know what to do because there was a black face. But you see, the key question is that we have to understand as we are building this revolution, as some people say, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And we did not waste the struggle to exchange a black face for a white face we were not looking for a new oppressor. We were looking for the question of liberation of our people, right? And that's what we have to clearly understand. It's like, you know, some of us got a little confused when those black cops beat up and killed the brother in Memphis. But you see, it doesn't matter what your skin color is. If you have the wrong mentality, you will execute on behalf of Europeans, and you will execute in terms of an oppressive mentality. And that's one of the things that we have to change. So I just want you, Milton, to just talk a bit about this vicious regime and why it's so important that we gather, you know, in order to support. Not only we're supporting Bobi Wine, but we're supporting more than Bobi Wine. He is the epitome of that which we see in the future.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Daniels. Thank you, sister, for that wonderful, inspiring warm-up. Sisters and brothers, Dr. Daniels actually has hit the nail right on the head. Part of the problem has been that we don't want to criticize our own because we see that as a betrayal. We should all stand together. But we can't all stand together when some of our own have been the worst betrayers. Who killed Thomas Sankara? Blaise Compaoré, who was supposedly his best man, his best friend, an African, a Burkinabe, working in the interest of Western capital that did not like what Sankara was doing. And what was Sankara doing? He said, grow your own food. Why are we dependent? He said, if you want the evidence of imperialism, look at your plate. If your food is imported, that's imperialism. And I think that's the main reason he was really killed. Within 3 years, they were growing their own food. Food self-sufficiency. Within 3 years. He said, why are we excluding half of our population from the workforce? The women. Let's not give them token positions. Let's give them meaningful positions in government, in the military. And then he transformed their mindset. He said, everything we need, we can produce it ourselves. And that's the kind of message that the West does not like, because they want dependent countries in Africa. And in rulers or misrulers like General Museveni, they have a very dependable neo-colonial ruler. So if we cannot afford to say we can't criticize Museveni because he's a fellow African. No, in fact, in the case of Museveni, it even gets worse. He was once interviewed by a magazine called Atlantic Monthly. And you won't believe what he said, but it's in print, so you can go look it up. September 1994 issue. He's been around so long. He's been around 37 years. That's why I'm pulling back something from 1994. He said, I've never blamed the white man for colonizing Africa. I've never blamed the white man for enslaving Africans. If you're a fool, you should be taken as slave. That is the kind of mindset that they have been supporting to rule an African country, destroy an African country, destroy the hopes of the youth of an African country for 37 years. Look at the contrast. In the Congo, Patrice Lumumba, a nationalist Pan-African, was allowed, even though he was elected democratically, to be in power for 3 months, from June 1960 to September, overthrown by Mobutu, backed by the CIA and Belgian intelligence and British intelligence. Mobutu, who replaced him, who destroyed the country, who had him brutally murdered, his body cut up, dissolved in sulfuric acid, if you didn't know, because they didn't even want him to be buried properly so people could go and celebrate him. Mobutu was maintained in power for 37 years. The same thing we have in Uganda, a reactionary, an anti-African African. I just told you in the magazine. And he practices what he preaches. You only saw a small sample in this film. And Brother Bobi Wine is right. Those were the most sanitized parts of what has been going on in Uganda. Supported by women die on a regular basis while delivering children because there's no facilities in the hospitals. There was a recent story about a woman who died because she was denied entrance to the hospital. She didn't have the money to pay. When the dictator's own daughter was about to deliver, she got on the $50 million Gulfstream jet that he bought with public funds, sent her to Germany to deliver the baby, his grandkid, and then fly back to Uganda. That's the type of anti-African we have ruling Uganda. We need to get rid of those kind of leaders and let the best of Africa emerge. And Bobi Wine is one example of the best in Africa. And we have it in many other African countries. So you can help us in that struggle, sisters and brothers. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Brother Milton. And now I'd like to turn to Mel Foote. Mel Foote has been, he's a quiet brother. He tries to play, like quiet and stumbles around like he don't know much and all that kind of stuff. But that's calculated because he's a bad brother. And he has been dedicated for decades to building relationships on the continent, building a constituency in the United States for Africa. There are so many things we could say about him. The African Growth and Opportunity Act, he virtually wrote it and brought it into existence. The Africa Summit didn't turn out as maybe the way we all wanted to, but he is one of the ones who helped to put it on the table and is constantly pushing on it. I get emails from him all the time. He's on the watch, working with key leaders, working on Africa policy. One of the proudest moments I have is that our dear beloved sister, who is the UN ambassador for the Biden administration, is a close friend and confidant of Mel Foote. And I have a photograph with our UN ambassador. So Mel, I would like for you, I know you're nonpartisan and you don't endorse candidates and things of that nature, but the issue becomes the trend on the African continent and your feelings about that, given how much time you invest. There have been how many, 5 coups or 6 coups in the last almost 6 months or so? I mean, whatever we have. So contextualize what you're seeing in Uganda in terms of the movement and what you see around the continent, and how does that fit in terms of what you see in terms of the future?
Well, thank you very much, Ron, Bobby. First, let me say the movie. I thought the movie was powerful. Where's the rest of it? I thought it was powerful. It was well done. I thought it was honest. And so that needs to be seen broadly by people. I thought it was excellent. So I really love the part where you met your wife, and
yes,
and she didn't know who Bobby was. You think is that possible? Well, that's how love works. But I thought it was very, congratulations on the movie. It was excellent. I got to see the rest of it. In terms of Africa, my whole career has been Africa, almost 50 years now. Started out as Peace Corps volunteer in Ethiopia and Eritrea. I spent several years in Somalia. I spent several years in Sudan. So when they say an African American, I love Africa and I love America, and I try to operate in that paradigm. I think, the United States, quite frankly, is uneducated, undereducated, and miseducated about Africa, period. If you go outside of the Beltway here and you say you're from Uganda, they would not even know where you're talking about, how many countries in Africa, they wouldn't have a clue, Tell me something about Mussolini, they wouldn't have a clue. And this doesn't matter if there's Black Americans, white Americans, Hispanic Americans, we just don't know much about Africa. And one of the things I try to pressed on, and I pressed on with Ambassador Carson last week. We had him for a dinner, and I asked him, how are we going to correct this distortion? You know, you're talking about you want to invest $50 billion in Africa or something like that. How are you going to tell this to the Trump people who think that every dollar we spend in Africa is taking something out of my pocket, but yet we'll spend that money on Ukraine at the drop of the hat? And so, you know, for me, my mother always told me growing up, don't agonize, because I would come home from school all mad about stuff. Don't agonize, organize. You know? Don't just get mad, do something about it, you know. And so what I try to do with my work is I try to structure stuff that change the paradigm. And whether it's trade, whether it's the HIV/AIDS, President Obama, I got him to do the Young African Leaders Initiative. I told him, don't spend your time on Mugabe and Bia and Bashir and Museveni. Spend your time with the young ones coming up, the next generation, because I think it's about change. I met President Museveni back in '94 in Kampala, and this was during the time of AGOA. And I turned around and, you know, 25 years later, he's still in power, you know, and acting like he don't want to go nowhere. And I ask myself sometimes, is there a God out here? Doesn't God have something to say about this? But, you know, we as a constituency, we as a people have got to get better organized to, you know, to change things. I'm an example that you can change the U.S. policy if you can get focused, if you can actually press on them and make sure that they're interested in what you're talking about. And that's a real critical. Ron, you do a superb job of that. And you've done it for 50 years or more. And Ron is probably the smartest black man I know. And really, I'm not blowing smoke. But he's been doing this for so long and constantly present. He's the nicest human being on the planet. But you know, sometimes to get stuff done with black people, you got to be a tyrant. You got to be mean and angry. You got to act like Museveni. But I think the change is going to come. You know, I think that young people, and when I look at people who are in their 40s, come on, this is going to be your world, whether I like it or not, whether Ron likes it or not. This is going to be your world. You know. And Africa has a lot of work to do. A big part of this problem is Africa is not unified. You know, Africans never were a unified place. It was about tribes, ethnic groups, and clubs and whatnot. You know, the Europeans came and drew boundaries, and so you want to go see your brother, you need a passport. You know, this is not an African thing. So Africa is trying to get itself unified. I think it has a long way to go before that happens. I think that African Americans also are trying to connect with Africa. But what they've done to us through slavery and through this process, took away our names, took away our culture. You know, we're looking at each other, don't know who we are or what we are. So I think Julia Malveaux hit the nail right on the head. You know, this is not just a problem in Africa. This is a problem with the African world. So I'm honored to be here. Anything I can do to push the agenda, I'm going to do it, you know. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Ron and I will talk and see what we can do that actually makes them, but you can actually get the policymakers. They don't buy this. Most of these people in Congress, a lot of people think because you're in Congress, that means you must be smart. I've seen some of the dumbest people I've ever met in this country sitting up there on the hill. Don't know S-H-I-T-U-M-Shinola. You know, I ain't supposed to cuss up in here. And yet they're sitting there because they somehow wrangled a seat in Congress. And so what I found is that you got to work on staffers. You got to work on twisting it so that the member of Congress can be seen as a leader. If we had a member of Congress here today and they saw this film and saw us sitting here, you would have believed that they would have switched their whole thing talking about, yeah, we got to move this agenda and you know. So you gotta psychologically work on members of Congress. Who's our member of Congress who is taking the lead on this? I don't know who it is.
Correct.
So we got to work on some of these things. But I'm excited to be here. I learned a great deal just in watching the film. I've met Bobi on several occasions now, but the film did something else. It kind of educated you. about the reality of the situation in Uganda. So I'm here, and I'm very supportive of what we're trying to do, and Ron knows how to reach me, and so we're going to forward to that.
Thank you very much.
Our power. People power.
All right. Well, we're gonna take some questions and or comments from the audience now. And I just want to say a couple of other things. I miss one of our great leaders in Black America and globally, one of the great thought leaders, particularly on the issue of reparations, but much more. In fact, we got 3 different things happening coming up. You know, we're doing this event tonight, and got a special thing on Haiti coming up on Saturday. But on tomorrow, we'll be talking about H.R. 40. The bill, not only to study, but the bill to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans. So I referenced our dear beloved sister, Nkechi Taifa, who's been on reparations forever and done a great job with it. And also drug policy. I mean, she has done so much in so many different areas. But we also have in the audience Cam Howard, who is the executive director of Reparations United, former co-chair of the COMITED. Cam Howard is with us today as well. So now what I want to do now, and by the way, I had a very interesting, I'm always, whenever I'm in the Ubers and so forth, you know, I'm always trying to figure out the accents and that, talking to people, and it's very interesting. That's one of the, I bumped into somebody who knew Kim, who when I was on the Uber. I had 2 Ethiopians today, so I was talking about the crisis in Ethiopia. And then yesterday, I was with a brother. I think he's still in the audience. I want him to raise his hand. He may have eased out already. And so he was like on fire because he's trying to engage building these bridges of economic opportunity among African Americans and Africans. And he was talking about Sierra Leone. I told him I know Ambassador Sadiq Y. But also Raleigh Kimbrough is in the audience. And Raleigh Kimbrough is a global entrepreneur. He's doing big, he's doing work all over. Raleigh is still in the room. Anyway, Raleigh is a member of this church, and he does great work. But it's a Brother Thomas. Brother Thomas, you still in the audience? I think he may have just left. But anyway, he was in the Uber, and I said, brother, what you doing? What's your, I said, is this your main gig? And he said, well, no, I'm just buying time. I'm investing in Africa. So I definitely want to connect him, because there's people like that we really want to connect, because his mind is in the right place, you know, and so we want to make those kind of connections as well. So what we want to do now is I'll grab the mic and scoot around the audience. If there are people who have comments, people who have questions, and I want to tell you in advance what my ask is going to be. Because tell no lies, claim no easy victories. We expected this space to be packed tonight. So I'm disappointed that we don't have a larger audience tonight. But that does not deter me at all, because I know, having seen this, that all of you are going to join with us, because we're going to do another screening, right? And we're going to put our heads together, and we're going to organize, and because people need to see this film. They need to see it. Right? They need to see it. And so we're going to organize, and I'm relentless in that regard. I come time and time again. So I'm going to grab my mic. I see Sister Taifa, but I saw my brother here first, so I'm going to scoot around. And Milton, you kind of keep the stack for me, okay? By that I mean who's first and whatever. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Brother Che, and the scripture says, call those things that be not as though they were. So I'll address you as Mr. President. Brother Guy, welcome. I saw that film probably a couple years ago on PBS, but it's a fascinating film, and that's what introduced me to President Wine. And I just say it's an honor to just meet you and just be here in the same space as you. I also want to say that we should be careful with the language of the oppressor. Now, I heard them.
In terms of human rights violations, the African Union have the African Justice Office in Arusha. have you ever, or do you feel that President...
And to make this a priority. Thank you.
Let me just say that we're working on the film question. In fact, now...
And this follows the massacre that happened on the 18th and 19th of November 2020, where more than 150 of our supporters, including men.
In Africa, this is a problem with that.
We're going to do another screening, right? The meeting. And there is a document that begins to do this, and Milton, you've done these fact sheets.
To political leaders and to the
because I know having seen.
So I'll address you as Mr. President. Welcome. I saw that film probably a couple years ago on PBS, but it's a fascinating film, and that's what introduced me to President Wine. And I just say it's an honor to just meet you and just be here in the same space as you. I also want to say that we should be careful with the language of the oppressor. Now I heard the word coup mentioned earlier tonight, but you never heard of the American coup, you heard of the American Revolution. The difference between a coup and a revolution is when the French or the Americans, like what Mobutu did, take out a great man for your personal gain and for your oppressor. What these young brothers are doing in Niger, in Guinea, and they are sitting down evil men that worked for Europe, for the people, and their mind and their hearts are for the people like yours is. And that's why I love you, and I wish you all the best.
Okay, we're following along with the brother. Greetings, Brother President Wine. I first met you at the State of the Black World several months ago in Baltimore. And seeing just a little bit of the film that we saw today, and then hearing from you as to what was coming next in the film, I'm really frightened. I'm going to be very honest. And I don't want to know any particulars or anything along those lines, but I just want to make sure that you have things in place for your personal security. Okay? Visible or invisible or whatever, just want to make sure that that is there so that when the fruition period comes, for you actually to be able to actualize that position as president, that you will be able to do so. And so I just want to say that because we love, honor, and respect you. Okay? And we need you to continue doing what you need to be doing without falling victim to what so many others of our young revolutionaries who have aspired to, so I'm just going to end it at that. Thank you.
So let me also continue as Mr. President as well. So we're going to claim that tonight right here in D.C. that we're in the presence of the next president of Uganda. I also had the pleasure of meeting you in Baltimore at the State of the Black Union address, and you talked about the brutality and atrocities that we didn't see in the film, and that it's up to us to be able to deliver this message to political leaders and to the American public that this is what their taxpayer dollars are funding. I know that the Africa Summit, Biden committed a number of billions of dollars, not only for aid, but also for security purposes in Africa, which means propping up these illegal military governments, like that's in Uganda. We need to, in our effort to work on behalf of the youth of Uganda, the people of Uganda, a document, a fact sheet that identifies and details the atrocities in writing that we can use as we go and interact and leave with these political leaders. And so they will say, we can say, you have the proof right here. It's not just what we're telling them. And so I think that is something that we need in order to move forward in our mission to help Africa rise.
Thank you very much. Let me just say, I'm coming over here, just FYI, we did have a meeting, Mel, with the person, Congressman Meeks wanted to meet with Bobi Wine. He was trying to, you know how it is, how difficult it is. But Congressman Meeks is the Congressional Black Caucus member who was the ranking, was the chair of the House Foreign Relations Committee. That is the powerful committee that deals with these global issues. He's now the ranking member, and he's on it. He is supportive of it. He's a dear friend of mine. I can pick up the phone and call him, and I have, and talk to him about this issue. And the person who is in charge of dealing with these questions at the staff level, and you know how that works. We spent an hour and a half today with that person. And I must say it was a very productive meeting. And there is a document that begins to do this. And Milton, you've done these fact sheets before. So we are going to do, Cam, exactly what you said. We're going to produce a fact sheet so that we have all the, and basically 2 pages or whatever. We'll have that information. Our Commandante, Don Rojas, who's with the Director of Communications and Information for and International Relations for IBW, is here, and we'll make sure we post it on the website, and we will share it around, so that, because a part of this is just the beginning. We'll come back here, but we have made a commitment to go to Cam, and you can help us when we co-host him in Chicago. And we will go to Rainbow Push with Reverend Jesse Jackson and meet there. And we'll be going, to the National Action Network in New York. We are going to build a powerful movement in this country for the new president. We're going to do that.
Panelists, thank you so much for being here this evening. Special thank you, President Bobi. This is more of a question. When I think of your campaign movement, it reminds me of Robert Nesta Marley. And I think what your campaign movement represents at the intersection of music, particularly African music and activism, is something huge. What advice or what comments would you have for anyone wanting to break into the music industry and not have capitalism be the wind behind that head? What advice would you have for folks?
I tell you, we take the questions, you can respond at the end if you choose, all right?
It's over there.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. President there. Brother Haki Ami, President of Teaching Artists Institute. I have a question in terms of human rights violations. The African Union have the African Justice Office in Arusha. Have you ever, or do you feel that President Museveni's, well, I'm sure you do, feel like that his crimes have reached a level to take that to the African Union in Arusha to get support or awareness, and have you pushed that to get it recognized, or if anybody else on the panel can speak to that?
We'll let you answer that.
The sister over there.
Oh. Sister, she's a culture worker too. She's been in our State of the Black World Conferences recommended by Nkechi Taiba, yes.
That's right. Blessings, everyone. My name is Nana Malaya, and I'm also known as the Dancing Diplomat. I am an artist, an activist, and an educator, and I wanted to actually mention to all of you on the panel, and I agree we're going to claim you as president already. I became familiar with Uganda through the culture and the arts. And back long ago now, 95, I worked with a group and I studied the Bakisimba and quite a number of other dances and traditions of Uganda. Yeah. And I mention that because getting a chance to meet all of you here, and I also want to encourage you, because you made mention of the culture, that even an event like this, which is primarily, I heard it as being political, but I know sometimes to get people's ear and eye, you need to bring them some of the culture. And having people singing and dancing, sometimes it's thought to be frivolous, but it's the culture. Sometimes it's the flower that gets people to see the root. And so I just want to, any way that I can assist you all in being that cultural ambassador, in ways in which I'm working with others here as well, because that's one of the ways to get people to pay attention to what's going on. Some people will hear that first, see that first, and then they'll be able to listen and hear each of you in terms of what you have. But it's also a way for people to get to know the people and the culture, because as we're talking about, in the United States, very few people know how many countries there are on the continent, the names, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to bridge that gap, and I'd like to help bridge that gap as well. So nice to meet you all.
And let me also just thank WPFW. I do know that WPFW was running the PSAs now, so a lot of people heard about it. And there are some conflicting events tonight too, because I know that the Rainbow Push has a big diaspora program tonight that they're having at the same time. Some of those folks would have been here as well. And then the Congressional Black Caucus is very active and whatnot. But we do want to thank WPFW. Let's give it up for WPFW. Right. We have to support WPFW. They've been a strong support of the work that we do over and over again. Any more comments or, okay, let's go here and here. So, you're first.
President Bobi Wine, it's truly an honor. I feel like I'm standing in front of you, Sanko Couture. It's really rare. It's rare to get to meet somebody who's truly great like you are. And I don't say that trivially. I think all of us saw in the film what you're standing up against, the risk you're taking to yourself to do that, and how much you mean to the people of Uganda. So I just want to say I admire you so much. I think that we all do. So thank you for being here and gracing us with your presence. My question is, what does Pan-Africanism mean to you? And how do you build coalition with other like-minded political activists around the continent? Julius Malema comes to mind as somebody who appears to be somebody on the same wavelength as you, and anyone else who comes to mind to you. Thank you.
Hey, Don, we got to sign up some of these young brothers here. Hey, we got some people, we got some Africans rising up in here. You know, and I like that. I like what I'm hearing. Yes, my sister.
Hi, my name is Florence. I'm actually from Uganda, so of course I know all these things that have been happening in Uganda over the last, several years, and many of us have been, traumatized with events in Uganda. How can we get this film screened in Congress and in the Senate? How do we get the people in Congress and Senate to watch this film? And how do we get this film on the major networks so that the people of America can see it? And one more thing, what steps can we take to get the government of the U.S. to cut off that $1 billion that they're sending to the regime in Uganda every year? Perhaps Brother Melvin will have some tips on things we can do. I know we've protested at the UN in New York. There have been several protests at the World Bank all over the place over the last 7+ years, but we don't seem to have made any headway. How do we get the U.S. government to actually listen to us and to make this a priority? Thank you.
Let me just say that we're working on the film question. In fact, Mel and we'll put that down. We talked about that today in our meeting. So we're not gonna be able to get them, that's why, though they cut it a little short, I mean, we really need Bobi Wine's people to have something to say about what goes into the reduced version, because it cut off too much. We need to get a mix of all the different aspects of it. But I think we will be able to get some congresspersons, but certainly staffers, in a luncheon or a meeting in which we do an airing of it and have that kind of, I think we can actually make that happen. So we're now going to go to our president for him to respond. Yes.
I saw that film on TV. It's either PB.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he'll share, because I know it's airing, it's showing in theaters and so forth. So it's now turn for him to respond. If you want to stand, you can.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I feel honored by the reception, and I take the honor and I report back to the people of Uganda that indeed in America people refer to me exactly how the people meant it. But I must also mention that it was not, and it is not an end in itself, just me being president, because it's not about me being president. Even if I don't become president, we just want to be free. We just want to see that freedom in our lifetime. I was only 4 years when General Museveni took power in 1986. I'm almost a grandfather. So we just want to see that freedom in our lifetime, regardless of whether or not I become president. I think it's very important to make it clear that our aspiration is to be free. And I'm just leading the charge right now. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to be at the front of it, but we just want to be free in our lifetime. And we will be free. We shall be. Quite a number of questions, but I'll question. Let me start from top. My sister asked a very deep question. I think it was a comment about my personal security and how I can guarantee it. I regret to inform you that I can't guarantee enough damage to the forces of oppression. It did not start with me. So many people have been in this struggle. Many of them have gotten worn out, many of them have gone. But now we are here. And we strongly believe that we are the generation to fulfill the promise. I can't guarantee my security, but the last time I was close to getting killed was when I was abducted by the military. I spent 3 days when nobody knew where I was, but internationally, people that I knew and many people that I didn't know raised their voices. They protested, they made noise, and the regime was pressured and released me. So I want to say that just like I owe my life to the protests that happened all over the world, I'm still at the mercy of those international voices. So please kindly keep your attention on Uganda, and whenever you see that I or anybody else has disappeared, your voices are the life-changing voices. We depend on them greatly, greatly. I must also inform you that I'm going back to Uganda next week. Yeah. I don't know what to expect, but I'll be alive. Yeah. My brother also asked us to come up with a fact sheet about Uganda, and I agree. I'm very honored to be working alongside my able elder brothers like Professor Limadi here. We have a leadership, a chapter here. I will ask them to take that upon themselves to see that those facts are put together and are spread as far wide as possible. Now, brother asked me about the music. What advice do I give to an artist who wants to make it, but not on the basis of Western capitalism or the bling bling or that? I'll first say music is super, super effective. I'm standing here not because I'm the most educated or I'm the most knowledgeable. As a matter of fact, I come from that generation that was mentally sterile for a very long time. We didn't care about what happened in our society. Personally, and I'll tell you a very quick story. In my early 20s, I was like any other excited artist. I grew up with my mother, my father, my family lost all their wealth when Museveni is coming to power. So when I was growing up, my mother warned me and all my siblings to keep out of politics because that was the reason why we ended up in the ghetto in the first place. So I worked so hard, became a super famous artist. I drove the first Cadillac Escalade in town with 24-inch spinning wheels, and I was accomplished until this one fateful day when I was walking in waves and moving out of a nightclub when a young man my age walked up to me because all the girls had their eyes on me, and he felt like I was stealing the show from him. So he walked up to me and slapped me. Before I turned to fight back, he pulled a gun and put it on my face, slapped me some more, and said, "Yo, why are you showing off? Don't you know this country has owners?" That's when I realized that, my fame and fortune did help when I was still oppressed. And using my fame and the effectiveness of my music, I changed and it became edutainment instead of entertainment. I started addressing the issues that many people had been facing, but I was, covered from, or so I thought. So I realized the importance of my music, and since then, my music even got deeper in the hearts of the people because I was singing about their predicament, I was singing about their situation. Music is very important. No wonder my music is now banned in Uganda. My name is banned in Uganda. My music cannot play on TV or on radio, and if you're caught playing my music, you risk your life. But guess what? My music is still the most popular music in Uganda. So, music is powerful. Now, to answer your question, what's my advice to an artist that wants to rise up but from the depth of his soul? I'll say, stay real. Keep real and keep true. Because when you sing the truth, actually that's when you get the real fans. Those that identify with you, they might come slow, but every fan that you get will be an ardent fan forever. You will grow with those people. I've been able to grow with those fans. We breathe the same air even before we meet because we are looking at something bigger than ourselves. This music is just an element that brings us together. So, sticking to what's right, speaking the truth and representing the truth and the reality, in my view and in my experience as an artist, is unbeatable. I don't know if that was the question, but I thought this I understood it. It's as if you were asking whether we have sought any redress from any court. Was that the question? Yes, in Uganda, General Museveni is a god, for lack of a better word. He has the parliament in his pocket. He has the courts of law in his pocket. He is the law, and the law is him. His son will make a pronouncement, no matter how illegal it is, and it will be taken by the courts and by all people. So we don't expect any justice in Uganda. However, we went ahead and we petitioned the International Criminal Court. We put a case against General Museveni in the International Criminal Court, and this follows the massacre that happened on the 18th and 19th of November 2020, where more than 150 of our supporters, including men, women, and children, even old people that were gunned down by the military. On camera, it was covered by BBC, by CNN, by Al Jazeera. We took him to the International Criminal Court. We hope that the International Criminal Court will do the right thing, but we just want to make sure that we tick every legal box across the globe. So we took General Museveni to the International Criminal Court. We also hope to bring another case in the East African Court of Justice. But we also know that, you know, we are dealing with an extremely empowered and, you know, a regime that has been in power for 37 years. We only do the right thing, and we hope these institutions will also do the right thing. That is how far we can go internationally. Locally, we are galvanizing our people to resist, to continue resisting, even under tough conditions. My brother asked, what does Pan-Africanism mean to me or to us? Pan-Africanism, as far as I know, is the rooting for or the desire to uplift African people or people of African descent all over the world. As told to us by our forefathers, the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, the likes of Nyerere, and many other forefathers and mothers that came before us. And that's what we know, what is supposed to be done. Unfortunately, there's a different version of Pan-Africanism by the African leaders, majority of them. In fact, it's not only a redefinition of Pan-Africanism, it's also a redefinition of these continental and regional blocks, the East African Community, the African Union, and all that. I'm afraid to note painfully that the East African Community and the African Union have been reduced to presidents' clubs to look out for each other against their people, but not for the African people. You'll notice that it's the African people that suffer most in Africa. It is harder for an African man, for a black man like me, to cross from one African country to another, and it's much easier for a white man. It is more dangerous for an African man like myself to live in an African country called South Africa because of the xenophobia, where we Africans are seen as intruders, but you know, the Europeans are saluted and have a red carpet rolled out for them. It is more painful for a black Ugandan man to do business in Uganda than a Chinese or Indian man or woman. That's the kind of Pan-Africanism that our leaders are showing us. I mean, recently when we had the COVID pandemic and we had our black brothers and sisters in countries like China segregated and blocked from housing. I dealt with some African brothers here in the US, and we were able to charter a plane to fly them back, but no African government would allow us to land, including Uganda. You know, so that's the kind of Pan-Africanism that we are having. We are being mortgaged. You know, what is African to the leaders of Africa? Majority of the leaders is the resources, not the people. So, according to me, I believe that Pan-Africanism should be the upliftment of the African people, not African leaders. You know, it should be about the people. And not only Pan-Africanism, but even the regional and continental blocks, they should be about the people, bringing the people together and looking out for the people, the populations, and not the leaders. Unfortunately, it is the leaders and not the people. We, the people, are seen as let me reserve that. We were also asked by my sister, how do we get the congressmen and women to watch this film? I don't know. We're trying as much as possible. This morning, I flew from LA to here because there was an opportunity to speak to this crowd, however small it is, and we make every effort to ensure that anybody, not only the congressmen and women, but you, the voters, to make sure that you see this, because if you see this film, maybe you'll make an effort to see that another person sees it, and you'll have reason when something happens in Uganda or in any other country in Africa to raise your voice. And I must say that Uganda is just a case study, ladies and gentlemen. Do not reduce this only to Uganda. We are only a case study. And because maybe I'm a popular artist and there's that aura of cameras that come to me, but just recently in Zimbabwe, there was an election. And what happened in Uganda exactly happened in Zimbabwe. Unfortunately, they don't have the opportunity that I have. We have our brothers in Eritrea. We have our brothers in many other parts of Africa. The same pain that we go through. So I hope what I'm saying here is not only representative of the people in Uganda alone, but all marginalized people in Africa and all the black world all over the world, and also other marginalized places like in South America and many other places. I hope my words represent them, because it would be very selfish for me to limit this plight to only Uganda. Our people are suffering all over the world. And finally, the same sister asked, how do we get the US government to listen? Well, the US government will listen to you if you pressure it. Some Jamaican singer said, if you don't stand up, nobody's going to see you. If you don't yell, nobody's going to hear you. So speak up, and speak up some more. When they don't listen, don't stop. Even when they listen, don't stop. Thank you.
All right. And so, as I told you, you are witnessing the next president of the president will assume his position. And I want to close, and we're going to find an inspirational way of closing. I don't know whether you were in the film. They were asking you to do improvise a quick one, and then you got Sister Kim over there. I don't know what we might have to figure out how we're gonna knock it out at the end, right? So, but I do, on a very sober note, want to say the following things. Number one, it's not hard, it's not easy to be a revolutionary and maintain a family. It's very difficult. During the course of the Black freedom struggle in the 60s and 70s, that was one of the key questions. A lot of families got split up because it was just hard, the pressure, if you will. And so, and I say this with all humility, I have been on this struggle for many, many years. I'm just 81 years old now, going towards 82. Founders of African Liberation Day. And some of you were here in 1972, Sister Keisha, you were here. 35,000 people in the streets here in Washington, D.C., 10,000 in Canada. Oakland, California, another 10,000. The New Jewel Movement, this man here was the press secretary for Maurice Bishop right here. We did that because we were committed to the liberation of Africa. We were young Pan-Africanists fighting for the liberation of Africa. And I shall never forget, the reason why we did that was because we went to the OAU and we had an experience in which we were chastised appropriately because we were in there hot stuff and and whatever. And they said, well, what is this Pan-Africanism? We don't see you doing nothing, frankly. And we took up that challenge. But because we did, there were so many movements that sprang out of African Liberation Day. The Free South Africa movement, led by people like Randall Robinson and others who went to the South African embassy, Congressman Fauntleroy and our sister with the, helped me out with the commission, thinking Mary Frances Berry and others. So we have some skin in the game. I am an ardent Pan-Africanist, but let me just also address your question. There is even when Pan-Africanism was conceived, there was a struggle around it. Because there were some people who just wanted it to be cosmetic. All black people coming together. But we now know that that is not enough. There was a split between those who were the so-called Monrovia group, Liberia and Ethiopia with Haile Selassie. They wanted Pan-Africanism. But they did not want a Pan-Africanism that was really going to be for the people. They were nervous. In fact, they put into the OAU Charter the non-intervention into the affairs of another country because they did not want anybody to mess with the fact that they were in power. But you then had the Casablanca group. That's where Nyeri and Sekou Touré and Kwame Touré, they were in that group. And Nkrumah. So what we're talking about is progressive Pan-Africanism. Progressive Pan-Africanism is exactly what Bobi Wine talked about. It is a Pan-Africanism that is about the total transformation of African people, the liberation of the African mind, and the capturing and the utilization of African resources for the development of African people. That's what it's about. And I don't spare it. We have too many handkerchief-head African leaders who are self-aggrandizing. They're giving the resources of Africa away, and they are parking their money. I mean, Mobutu had what, about $500 million parked somewhere? Museveni probably got $1 billion. I mean, come on. So we're talking about progressive Pan-Africanism. The other thing I wanted to say is that it was that family, your family, but the way in which you see yourself, it's a partnership, working together. And by the way, this is about, I do mean partnership. Because we also have to address in our own communities very often the question of patriarchy and paternalism, where women are relegated to being in a second place position. We cannot have that. Not in the new African world. We have to have partnership. The other thing I want to say, if you want to talk about, there is no guarantee. We cannot guarantee, and he is in danger. I'm a prayerful man. I pray for this brother. I talk to Milton, I say, oh my God, look what he just said. Man, I feel a lot. But the best way to protect him is to build a powerful international movement. So you don't dare touch Bobi. Hands off Bobi Wine. Hands off our president. That's how we do it. Because then the international community will think twice. And not only that, the real deal here is not only does he have to be concerned about the European imperialists, he also has to be concerned about these leaders who see him as a threat. Because if, in fact, Museveni goes, they know that in their own communities, there are people are rising up to challenge them as well. Yes. So they are also plotting and scheming and trembling. Yes. And they need to tremble. Because they need to go. They need to get out of the way so that Africa can move. So our takeaway is we are going to move on a number of different issues. I'm glad my brother is passing around the sheet. He's a good organizer. He's been well trained, because we didn't think about that, but we get a copy of it, because we're going to be calling on people, because there are a number of things that we will be working on to build this movement. So I want to, in fact, thank you all profoundly for coming out, because you could have been doing many, many other things. And to me, I never ever really worry about how many people come. I really don't. because we don't know who's in this room. Like who will be the next person who takes this message and turns in a very dynamic way in order to tip the scale. So I'm a Christian, so you know, Jesus the Christ he only had 12, but the 12 became the multitude. You saw in this film a person who had the guts and the courage to stand forward fearlessly. And when you see these images of thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of young people,
2 weeks ago,
it says that when you have the courage and the vision, then people will follow. So I'm not deterred. We're gonna move forward. We're gonna build on this. We're gonna help bring Bobi Wine across the country. We're gonna be interfacing with the rest of our faith leaders, labor leaders. We're going to build a powerful movement in this country. So we're not gonna close with that. We gotta close on a high note. We're either gonna do a harambe. If we don't do a harambe, we're gonna do a freedom song. But we're gonna say amen collectively as an African people. And we're going to ask Bobi Wine and Kim Poole to step up here and figure out how they're going to dismiss us. You have the floor. Come on.
Thank you very much. I must recognize the presence of our local leader, the leader of our chapter, Thank you very much for the leadership. In our absence, he answers all the questions. I'll teach you two things. First, I'll teach you our slogan. When you say people power, you say our power. When I say our power, you say people power. Okay, let's do it. People power. Our power. Our power. People power. People power. Our power. Our power. People power. Thank you. And then there's a song that we sing. We get it from a hymn. We sing these words not just because we enjoy them, we sing them because we believe them. The song goes, when the struggle is over, we shall wear the victor's crown. We shall wear the victor's crown. We shall wear the victor's crown. When the struggle is over, we shall wear the victor's crown in a new Uganda. So this is how it goes. When the struggle is over, we shall wear a victor's crown. We shall wear a victor's crown. We shall wear a victor's crown. When the struggle is over, we shall wear a victor's crown in the new Uganda. Come on our feet, let's do this again. When the struggle is over, we shall wear the victor's crown. We shall wear a victor's crown. We shall wear the victor's crown. When the struggle is over, we shall wear the victor's crown in the new Uganda. So listen to this freestyle. Our people complaining night and day. They wonder why they continue to live this way. But I know that things can change someday. If we really want them to change anyway. Africa is a land of abundance. But the Africans living in the deficiency. The leaders want like presidency. Must abandon that city tendency. Africa rich but the Africans poor. Because the leaders they drunk on power. They run nations like family affair. The citizens suffer, but we don't care. When the struggle is over, we shall wear the victor's crown. We shall wear the victor's crown. We shall wear the victor's crown. When the struggle is over, we shall wear the victor's crown. In the new Uganda. People power! Our power! People power! Very much.
I was born by the river in a little tent, and oh, just like that river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know up there on the skies. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes it is. People power. Our power. Our power. People power. Let's go.
Okay, now finally we're gonna do something Harambe too, right? Harambe means all, let's all pull together. We're gonna do it 7 times. Harambe 7 times, all right, let's go. Harambe! 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 All right.
President Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi Wine olukuŋŋaana lwe bwe lutyo bwe lutambula era bwe lutambudde olw'okusinkana abo abamusigansimbi abalonzi ba America bonna abadde bulijjo bawa Museveni ensimbi okulaba ng'ate bakomyawo okumuwa ensimbi ate bannayuganda basobole okweyagalako Bannayuganda basobole okuba obulungi basobole okuba basanyufu nga balina ensi ennungi ensi gye bettanira ensi gye baagala ensi ey'emirembe ensi eyawakati ensi ey'omwanguka ensi eyeyagaza ensi gye tweyagaliramu nga bannayuganda buli omu. Kyagulanyi agamba omulamwa oguliwo gwakulaba nga tulwanirira eggwanga lyaffe nga tulwanirira ensi yaffe tusobole okuligya mu mikono gy'abajambula edde mu mikono gy'abannayuganda buli omu mwana gyeyagalira. Ekintu si kyangu naye tulina okulemerako tulina okufuba ennyo tusobole okukituukiriza ate nga one day kijja kutuukirira era tujja kulaba ku nsi yaffe ng'eteredde ng'ensi nnungi era nga yeesiimisa. Tweyanziza nnyo Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi Wine okuba nti osobodde okutambuza enjiri era wano otutuuse nawo walalamu mwami Museveni kati nno zigenda kwaka. Kyagulanyi waakomerawo nga ssaawa yakuddamu country tour bagambye ziri mu mateeka n'olwekyo General Museveni ajja kuba ali mu kusaaga busaazi kati nno zigenda kudda okunywa. Omukama Katonda nsaba bankuumire tujja kuba nga tuddamu okwogera ebigambo mweraba.